Greetings, hello, Reanimators. This is episode 292 of Reanimated podcast, and I am one of your hosts, Stuart, and I am coming at you from California, from the New York side of things. Is the unenviable H.A. Conrad.
I don't know. I think I'm a little enviable. Come on.
I'm just being cruel at this point.
I mean, I've got some bagels to eat. I've got pizza here. I have a pretty good situation. I've got a cemetery to walk in. There's lots of enviable things about my life.
My God, you just named like several great things, including the cemetery, for sure.
But, you know, and also I like zombie films, so that's enviable, right? Right.
I was speaking completely out of turn. I take it back.
All right.
The utterly enviable H.A. Conrad in New York. And we are going to be talking today about Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's latest opus. And I can't wait to hash that out with you. But I guess we can check in quickly. How's the state of your pandemic? Are you good?
Pretty good. It's been pretty much, you know, masks off everywhere. We actually traveled by train to go and see my mother-in-law, who is now returned from Thailand. So that was really nice to be able to see her. But travel is a little weirder now. So you have to, you know, there's a lot of station rules and things like that, and you have to mask up, and that's definitely a place where you're not, you cannot take your mask off, and some people are still trying to not comply, and I think it's really hard on the people, like the conductors and things. At least we took like a Amtrak train, and I think it's really hard on the conductors and other people who are trying to stay safe, and then they have to get into these kind of weird confrontations, and we saw a couple of these happen on the train. So I think that there is going to be a little bit of push and pull from people who feel like they should be able to unmask completely. And, you know, I think there's just going to be an adjustment period. I definitely felt like it's been kind of a weird thing, because it's sort of like I've been going a little bit more with my mask off if there's nobody around, like outside, like for walks and things like that. But I still definitely wear it inside any place. And as I mentioned last week, there's been some tension about that with some places too, and with the people who work there, and it's not even like some of the people who really want to take their masks off. Like, it's interesting because it's not. I don't know, and this may be an incorrect assessment, but it honestly seems to be people who aren't vaccinated who seem to be raising the biggest fuss. So I've now seen a few different things where it's like, well, and the sort of the subject of the conversation has been, well, if I want to take the risk, that should be okay. So it doesn't seem to be people saying I'm vaccinated, so I should be able to go without the mask. It's people who are like, I'm unvaccinated and I want to take the risk, right? So that's kind of odd. I don't know if you've seen anything like that, but you know, I definitely feel a lot more confident that I have been vaccinated, but it is, and I get it, it's not like a comfortable thing to wear those masks, but I certainly wouldn't have been taking it off on the train, you know. So that's been kind of, you know, what it is. But this has been probably the rainiest Memorial Day weekend that I can recall. So I haven't really seen a ton of crowds and stuff out in the streets, you know. So that's kind of, you know, interesting. But what's been going on out there?
Locally, we've been having a little bit of an uptick in cases, and it's almost all unvaccinated people. But our case rate's going up. But not like massively, just we were at about 10 cases a day in our 500,000 person region. And now it's up to like 35, or the high was 60, which is, you know, maybe a little troubling. It does definitely show that folks are getting out and, you know, being less anal. And so this is going to be the case. I'm hoping that some of these infections will result in more people wanting to get vaccinated, because we are seeing a real dip in demand. So a lot of clinics are just like sitting there without enough customers, or like just a handful come through.
Well, we saw actually an uptick once they approved it for the next age group, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that there is an uptick there in terms of the demand, but they think mainly it's for the like children who had in those age ranges that hadn't been able to get vaccinated up until that point.
Yeah.
So there's that. The case rate here is actually really low. It's almost, I think it's, I didn't check today, but it was lower than like last summer when it was really low. So I'm hoping that this continues and we get there. The other somewhat disheartening news that I saw also related to the travel piece, because it seems like a lot of people a lot more people are flying. I will say, just as this is totally subjective, obviously, I don't have a count of all the people that were on the train, but the train was like very much sold out.
Oh,
So
wow.
that I wasn't quite anticipating because we actually took a train that was not necessarily like within the, I guess it was just like ahead of the weekend, so it makes sense. But
Yeah. Domestic travel is just going to be off the charts this summer.
yeah, so I think that it's indicative that people are feeling more comfortable at least doing that now that, and probably a lot of them are vaccinated. But I don't know if you saw this, but on a lot of the airlines, they have basically decided to not serve alcohol because there's been actually an uptick in the series of attacks on like flight attendants,
Well, I saw
which
that one video from Southwest. That
well,
was
there was
messed
that
up.
one, but apparently there's been a lot of incidents like this, and generally it's related to mask wearing.
Mm.
So that I think that's pretty hard. Like that, the flight attendant, the story I saw was the one where the flight attendant got her teeth knocked out, which I
Good
think,
Lord.
can you imagine seeing that happen? Like it's just terrible. Like so, for a job that has to be challenging anyway, to have to worry about this kind of thing is a little bit disheartening, but. Hopefully people will calm down, and hopefully there won't be as much stress and anxiety and these weird incidents happening. So that's all I have to really say about that for now.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about some zombie news then.
Yeah. So
There's two articles that we're going to talk about. Maybe I don't know, maybe some ancillary stuff that shows up too. But the first one,
the
this is
first
this is such a fluff piece, and
it
I've got.
is,
Have
but
you? So talk about it, HA. I'm sure
so
you've read it.
I saw this as well, and my reaction, both when I first read it and when I saw that you had put it in the show notes, was to just kind of laugh out loud. I'm like, who are they paying to write these? And I mean, I am definitely okay with people having different opinions than me. I just don't know how people can like this season of Fear the Walking Dead when it honestly to me is so bad that you and I are considering to like just stopping to watch the show, which I mean, I think longtime listeners of the show know that we're kind of like gluttons for punishment on this end of things. Like we will watch some really, really bad things for a really long time, just to see what happens, and we do like the content, and it is kind of fun sometimes to tear things apart, but and to be critical of them. But generally, I think the thing that frustrates us, or I won't speak for you, Stuart, that frustrates me, is when you do have sort of the makings of such a great show, and it would not take that much from a writing and storytelling point of view to turn this into like just a much better show. And I think this piece was just so bizarre.
So yeah, this is a
I don't.
comicbook.com piece stating that season 6 is the best season of Fear the Walking Dead
Right.
after last season 5 being considered the worst. And then they're basing this basically off of one interview with Michael Satrazemis, or maybe just a statement that he made. Maybe they didn't interview him, I don't know. And some comments from Shambliss, or about Shambliss and Goldberg and Scott Gimple. And they're basically, their statistics that they're referring to is Rotten Tomatoes. And so then you go and look at Rotten Tomatoes, and it is like, hey, like it's kind of undeniable. It's 88% on the critic rating and 84% on the audience rating. Okay, but then I have bones to pick. The critic rating, almost all of those, and it's like 7 reviews. They're that 88%. There was 1 negative and like 6 positive or something along those lines. 8 reviews, seven fresh, 1 rotten. I'm pretty sure that all but one of those positive reviews were from the first half of the season, which I do recall being better.
Oh yeah, and
Also,
yeah,
like that
and
was the Molasses Factory episode, and a
and those
couple of
were
those
all
other
right.
ones, and those were okay. And we were enjoying the John Dory
Yes,
storyline of
yes,
him being
yes.
a small town sheriff. Like, yeah, those were enjoyable. However, the audience reviews or scores are actually recent, and I don't know where they're coming from though. But there's a lot of 5-star reviews in May 2021 if you look down the Rotten Tomatoes, and so I assume that that's where they're like saying, okay, this is a incontrovertible fact that this season is better. But when you look at the fact that all of these critic reviews are from November and October, except for one, and they're saying that this is a dramatic 180 in March 2021 for comicbook.com, the people who wrote this article also. No coincidence there. It's just it's highly suspect to me. And yeah, I agree that yeah, we have been pretty consistent that this has not been a great second half of the season, with the exception of The Door, which was John Tory's outro.
Yep.
And yeah, I also want to acknowledge that I've seen critics in the past just like turn sour on a project, and then it's like really hard to get them back on board. Like I was reading reviews when the Matrix trilogy was coming out, of people just bagging on things and getting like plot points completely wrong in their reviews, and the people who are reading these reviews were like, wow, it seems like you really don't have an objective perspective on this anymore. And I want to be aware that that could be something that we're going through too, but it doesn't. I don't know, man. I certainly don't understand why comicbook.com is writing this article unless they're getting paid to do it. And when you look at the audience numbers for Fear the Walking Dead, the last episode that we talked about, which was Mother, had less than 1 million viewers.
Yeah. I raise a skeptical eyebrow at this article, but and as there's definitely the bright spots. The Door gave me hope that there was going to be a little bit more. But unfortunately, my fears about John Dory exiting were, I think, confirmed by what we've seen since. But we'll finish out this thing, and then we'll have to make a call. But at this point, I stand by my assessment of this particular season, which I think it's just a bunch of garbage. So that you heard it here first. So
Just bizarre.
it's very strange. But, we are, like, as everybody knows, and we've talked about this, we have been talking about this since they first announced this project. It's gone through a lot of different things. It was delayed. There was, like, editing things going on that gave us, hope.
Tig Notaro.
Yeah. We got that. And so, of course, what we are talking about today is Army of the Dead, which premiered on Netflix. And, by all accounts, it has been doing very well from a viewership point of view. I think that they timed releasing it very well. This is the kind of film that is one of those sort of big, silly, action-y set pieces, like ridiculous things that seem kind of like, going into a holiday weekend or whatever.
Yeah. Lots of summer blockbuster DNA here.
Oh yeah, it's definitely got that whole thing going on. And so I will say, if that's what they were going for, they definitely succeeded in that kind of a thing, in that kind of a feel for it. So I'm not totally shocked that it's getting the viewership. But let's talk about this a little bit. And, Zack Snyder pretty much did everything on this. He was the director of photography,
co-writer,
cinematographer. Obviously he wrote this. He's very deeply involved in this in this whole project. And I don't think that there is any doubt, and we have talked long about this. We have talked this several times, and at least I have talked about this. And I think visually, he is a fantastic director. I think that he has got an awesome sense of what things look like and what he wants them to look like. And he does a really good job at setting that stuff up. The thing that I do think that Zack Snyder struggles with, and where I think he could actually benefit and seems to benefit from having other voices in there, is some of the storytelling and the character development. So, and granted, I know that this is a blockbuster zombie film, but I do feel like Dawn of the Dead, his remake, had a little bit better storytelling pieces to it. And I don't know.
That was written by James Gunn. Isn't that crazy?
Well, there you go. And there you go. And I mean, that's the thing, is that I think he needs that help. And so, I think I trash Zack Snyder less than a lot of people do, because he gets a lot of, like, he gets a lot of flack from a lot of corners. He especially got it over Watchmen, which, I am a big Watchmen fan, and you and I talked about this, and I had it was interesting. I had this whole conversation with my friend Ali about this, who didn't read those books when he was, he was growing up. I didn't read them exactly when they came out, but I read them pretty close to it. So this was something, and I love Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen. And a lot of the people, and this did have something to do, once again, we have the Zack Snyder cuts and the usually the theatrical cuts and things like that, the edits that are made. And I think with the director's cut of Watchmen, you can see a lot more, and it was definitely a better film than the theatrical cut. But I do think that he got the idea of Watchmen and the characters, and I think it was cast very well. But I also think that he didn't, the depth of it was not what it probably should have been, given the love for this content that there was, and some of the nuances and the political aspects of it, I think, were unfortunately lost. But visually, he did an incredible job. The montage scene at the beginning of Watchmen is probably, the backstory is probably one of the best storytelling pieces I think I've ever seen. It's really...
There's a very similar montage in the credits for this movie.
Correct, and that is why I'm bringing it up. And
yeah,
it's really interesting. I think he does a good job. That is a fantastic. That is a talent that he has to tell, basically to give you the background in a very small amount of time. And he does it beautifully.
With no dialogue. Yeah.
It's almost it's a really incredible talent he has to do that. And I felt like he did that here too. So I thought that was pretty cool. And overall, the look of this, and we can talk a little bit about this with the making of, because I watched it and I think you did too. But, visually, it's got this really kind of dreamy quality about it. There's a lot of when you pull focus, everything is pretty much in your face, and goes out of focus pretty easily in the background, unless you're
depth of field is a micro
there's
centimeter.
Nothing. And I was also, it made sense as I watched the making of, because I was like, what did they add this effect in after? Because it's got this bokeh and other things, and bokeh is when everything in the background kind of blurs, but the depth of the subject is in focus. But this is sort of this dreamy quality, with some of the lenses, and he used Leica lenses, which are honestly probably the best glass out there. But these were sort of made for camera lenses, but they're all very different. So you have kind of they're known for their flaws, but that's something that some people go for, because it gives you this specific list.
In the making of, he's like, I love this camera because it's got a lot of flaws. I'm like, that interesting take. But obviously he had a whole idea and vision about how he wanted to shoot this film. And it's great to see a director right there with the camera, right up in the actors' faces. And that's just, I feel like this was a filmmaker's film, right? This is the kind of thing that the kids grow up thinking, I'm going to be a director. And he's doing the thing that I think people think they do.
He is such a visual person that I do think I loved that he was doing that. And the look of it is very cool. And I actually, even when he started to talk about those lenses, I was like, man, I'm surprised this was as in focus. And then a couple of seconds later, he goes, the other guy said, he was like, I'm surprised this was as in focus. And
the movie's way more in focus than I thought it was going to be. What?
Yeah, I know. It's
kind
really
of a scary
funny
thing to say.
Yeah. Well,
in some of the YouTube Snyder Film School videos that Netflix is also producing, there's one clip where he talks about how they were lighting everything with flashlights inside the casino in that really dark series of scenes, and he was wearing a white t-shirt, and he's like, hey, actor, shine the flashlight at me and you'll get lit off of my shirt.
A light off of your shirt. Yep.
And he had a flashlight attached to his camera. He's pointing it at the ceiling, and they had reflectors or boards or whatever you call them up there to throw back down a little bit of light. But they're basically lighting these scenes with just a few flashlights, and that was wild.
But without that camera, that camera is incredibly, that wouldn't be possible with old school cameras. It's only because this is such a different piece of technology, which the fact that they're getting any information out of that is pretty impressive. So
right.
Yeah, so it's kind of
So I
cool.
think visually, I guess we're on the same page that this movie has a real look and feel. It's unique, and it mostly looks really good. Yeah, there's some crazy blurry scenes, but also that was the vision that he was going for.
Hmm.
And as someone who did sit through all 4 hours of the Snyder Cut Justice League, they like to respect the director's vision
Yep.
sometimes.
So, so I also thought that it was interesting, and I knew this before because we've seen like a few articles about this. But he came up with the concept of this either while or shortly after making the remake of Dawn of the Dead,
Yeah,
and just had this like idea, and it does have some echoes of Dawn of the Dead, just even again, kind of in the beginning, the way the storytelling happens and the way the action happens, like definitely. A little bit of that kind of feeling going on, and basically wanted to come up with like a different way of doing things. And I do love that he really wanted to do like a zombie heist film, which I think is kind of fun. So
yeah.
I thought
And
that was kind of interesting.
his thought process on it from this behind the scenes again is like, I didn't want to do it. This is the way we had done it before, and so I wanted to stack a whole bunch of crazy stuff on top of one another. And honestly, he didn't even stop there. Like with the
Nope.
description that he made in the behind the scenes, there is some weird stuff going on in this movie,
Yes, there
AJ,
is.
that we're gonna have to talk about. But like, there are definitely aliens. There are definitely robots. Like
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah. I don't know what
And
to and
there, yeah,
some of this they don't even address. It's just kind of like
it's
there.
just there.
So I thought that was a little like, and maybe again, maybe there's a director's cut that we don't know about. I don't know, but explains a few of these things a little bit better. You hear a little bit more about this in the making of, so I highly recommend if you're into this kind of thing, do watch the making of. I do think it's made for people that don't necessarily watch these types of movies, because one of the things I was struck by, even including his discussion about the lenses and the cameras and how they map Vegas, none of these things are new. And same thing with the zombie makeup and stuff like that. None of these things are new in terms of making films. It might be new to people who don't know about filmmaking and this kind of a big scale project, but all the things that they're talking about are kind of standard for like a horror film or any film that's going to be on this big of a scale and in a location like Vegas, where obviously you can't be out on the street. And then when you're talking about makeup for like tons, like hundreds of zombie extras, like of course you're not going to be able to like to put each person in the makeup chair for hours upon hours when they're in the background, you know? So there's lots
Yeah.
of stuff that I think are meant for people who maybe don't know about this stuff. So it felt like, I thought that was kind of interesting, the tone that they struck with the making of, because most of the people probably watching that are going to be people like you and me who are really into watching this. But I get it that maybe they tried to strike the tone for people who aren't necessarily in the know and are interested in learning about it. So it's definitely worth watching though. And I thought it was cool to see just even some of the like behind the scenes pieces where they are filming different things, and even how they built the sets. Like they brought the rubble in, the practical sets and things like that. That was pretty cool. And I enjoyed watching especially the pieces about the animals that
Hmm.
they show in this. They have a zombie tiger and they have a zombie horse, and especially the horse.
You could tell that was a real
Oh
horse,
yeah,
even in the movie,
oh
because
yeah,
it
it
just moved so
definitely,
naturally, and the tiger obviously
yeah.
had some CGI issue. There were a couple shots in this that were like, oh yeah, that's pretty obviously CG.
Hmm.
The tiger was good. It was like definitely on the Shiva level of tiger CG
Yeah,
tiger
yeah, yeah, yeah.
creations. But there was an early on scene where Zeus is attacking the soldiers, and it was just his movements didn't translate very well.
Right. There's a few of those. But I think it was on such a grand scale that you're going to have some of those choppy moments no matter what.
Mm.
And it definitely, I do think, initially I was a little bit worried, just about some of the big scenes, like the really massive, like set pieces. And when you were seeing sort of like the masses of zombies. And I think you and I talked about this before, and I was like, oh, I don't know how that looks. Is it going to look a little bit too much like, oh gosh, why am I World War Z, where I feel like they didn't do the best job at showing those like big crowds, like, and they clearly had run out of money, so it was sort of like this not so great effort, and it looked really like terrible. But I feel like I think they did a pretty good job here at some of those pull away shots, and to show just how many there were in the city, and just sort of their movements and things like that. And I will also say that they definitely had a lot of real people extras. Like a lot of this isn't, especially when they're kind of running around the major sets and things like that.
Hmm.
You're seeing like real extras, and you could even see it in the making of. That a lot of effort was put in to actually like show people. Or show extras and show zombies. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, this had to have been, I'm not shocked that this took forever to edit and to do all the things that they needed to do. It's just an incredibly, like, with this many moving parts, just such an incredible undertaking for all the things that you had to do with it. I mean, because you have the underground scenes, you have the overground scenes, you've got the casino scenes, you have the in the dark scenes, you've got the chopper scenes. Like there's so many. They really kind of throw in everything but the kitchen sink in
Yeah.
terms of this kind of stuff. So
So this movie was made for and by Netflix, or not by Netflix, but made for Netflix. I don't know that maybe there was a plan for a theatrical release at some point, but it doesn't feel like that. I feel like since we've heard about it, it's been slated to come out on Netflix.
yeah, that's what I think too.
And the Netflix released some numbers last week, midweek, that it had gotten 72 million views, which is tied for like ninth in the top 10 of all time Netflix movies. Number one being Extraction, which was that Hemsworth movie
Yep, I
that
watched
came
that.
out during COVID also. That was a really good movie. Obviously, there was a lot of like cinematography buzz about that one too, because of the way they shot these tracking shots of crazy combat, and the cameraman was like jumping over buildings. So that was number one, and then there's a whole slew of movies that you've heard of that it came out on Netflix. And Enola Gay was one of them, and a
Yep.
few others. And so one of the things, this was from a Deadline article, which we'll also have in the show notes, and one of the things that they mention is like props to Netflix for even releasing this kind of information, because a lot of the other streaming services like Disney Plus
Won't.
and HBO Max, they never tell people how many viewers, or well, they have to say, they usually report subscribers during their earnings calls, right? Because that's how
Right.
they tell their investors that they're doing a great job. But Netflix turned that corner, I don't know, a year or two ago, when they started saying this is our top 10. Maybe it's just last year actually, but I enjoy seeing that now when I go
Me
to
too.
Netflix,
Me
and
too.
Army of the Dead was certainly on that chart last week, but I don't think it is anymore. There's more new stuff has come out, or old stuff, even like Pelican Brief is now on the top
I
10 on
know.
Netflix, and I'm like, wow, that movie, I haven't seen that in a long time, but I'm
Well,
gonna
and
watch it.
it's funny you mentioned that because Bill had never seen it, and we saw that it was up there, and so we watched it. It doesn't age as well as
Oh
you would
no.
expect it to. Not that I expected it to. I remember disliking it when I saw it in the theater, which I did see it in the theater. But it's interesting that I wonder why that's made like a resurgence. I was curious about that because it seemed to kind of come out of nowhere.
Hmm.
So it was
It's like, I don't know, prime Denzel and Julia Roberts, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So either way, like the Netflix reporting that this movie had gotten 72 million in its first week, I think, and Extraction got 99 in 4 weeks. So we'll see if it maybe starts climbing up that rankings if Netflix continues to release numbers on the viewers. I'd love to see a zombie movie do really well, modern times. But clearly, oh yeah, one of the other ones that was really high on that list was 6 Feet Underground, or Six Underground or something, which is a Ryan Reynolds movie from 2 years ago. It was so bad. It was so
Yeah,
bad. It was
yeah.
really expensive and really terrible.
Yeah, we couldn't even finish watching it.
Yeah.
It was so bad. So there was that.
So, however, that link will be in the show notes. Do you want to start talking about the plot and characters and
Yeah,
performances?
yeah, yeah. So, and again, this is a film that had there was a lot of stuff going on. Of course, we have a pretty like this is for those of you who are into Dave Bautista, he is in this as like the main sort of leader. This fathery figure. They have him in like glasses. They have him as this like gentle giant but badass kind of thing,
Hmm.
and you kind of see that from the beginning. But I think probably the most and of course we've got a few different people. Ella Purnell, who I had not, I feel like I've seen her in other things and I just don't recall, but she looked very familiar to me. She plays his daughter, Katie. And then there is just it's a pretty big cast, but you do get to know them pretty well. And then you've also got obviously Garrett Dillahunt. And then probably the biggest story around this was Tig Notaro, who replaced Chris. Is it Delia or Delia?
Dalia.
Delia. After there were some sexual assault allegations, so they basically replaced him in the film. I really liked Tig Notaro, so I was psyched to see her. And I have to say, I heard and then saw that she was like pretty much put in green screen into everything. So
Yeah, she only
wasn't
did one
even.
scene with a
Yeah.
member of the cast, and that was Ana de la Reguera, who plays Maria Cruz. She did one scene with a human actor, and the rest of it was green screen and just like spliced into the movie, which is kind of bananas. But it is a little noticeable too
You
when they
can
go
see
to
it a
hire
couple
her.
places. Yeah, there's like a couple, and then even in how they have her doing some of the lines and things like that, because I knew about this going into it, I'm like, oh yeah, well I guess that makes sense, and that's a little awkward. You know what I mean? Like there was a couple,
But
but
if you didn't know, would you
I
would you
don't know
really
that
be
you would have
picking up on it?
noticed as much, right?
But it's helpful that Scott Ward, Dave Bautista, only ever refers to that character as Peters. A lot of them go by their last names, except for Scott, who I think is Scott to everybody, and
Yeah.
Anna, or Kate, his daughter. Everybody else seems to have a last name situation if they get called anything. But like Dieter, I didn't realize that was his last name. So yeah, other real. I mean, the ensemble is really good. It's
Yeah, they're
strong,
great.
right? Omari Hardwick is good as Vandero, a little bit underused, but has like a significant role. Ana de la Reguera is good as Maria Cruz. Theo Rossi from Sons of Anarchy and other things, but always think of
Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy when I see him. Is a great useful idiot and bad all around bad guy. Um, Bert Cummings and I really enjoyed his role. And this Matthias Schweighofer
He was
guy,
great. He was
he's great, and
fantastic.
he's an important person to mention because he is directing the prequel. He's directing, and he is cast. It's the story about his character. Is there's going to be a prequel movie? I don't know if I had realized this. Did you realize
No,
this?
I did not. So, but that
We
I
knew that there
liked.
was an animated series or an animated
I
something
knew
coming out.
that, but I just didn't know that there was this prequel thing. And they definitely set this up to have sequels. Clearly. So,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
I'm pretty. I would be pretty interested to see what's about to happen next. Honestly,
right.
um,
But I liked him a lot.
he was a comic relief character, but well written and well performed. His screams are some of the best. Chef's
Yeah,
kiss.
definitely. And then there was also Nora Arnazed. I don't know how to
Arna
Arnazed.
Zadar.
Anna Zader. And she was she was really good as sort of the the badass like rebel who's leading people into the city to get money, like kind of like a coyote, which is kind of what they call her. But I thought she was very good.
It's kind of random that she's a French lady in Las Vegas as a coyote, but sure. Well, she plays a good badass, so she does a good
She
job.
does, she does.
Hiroyuki Sanada is a very recognizable dude ever since The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. He's been
Yep.
playing like samurais a lot,
Yeah, and in this
and
he's
he's
so.
not though. He's just like a business guy in this one. So I thought it was nice. He's playing against type a little bit. I mean,
And
he's still like a hard ass, but he's a little bit more of a showman. I don't know. I thought this was kind of an interesting role for him. Not really a lot of him on screen, but it was still cool.
And then there was Samantha Wynn, who, gets taken out kind of early.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about that and her a lot more when we get to that part
And
of
then
the.
Anna de la, I think, did you mention her? Anna de
Yeah.
la, yeah. So she's pretty, I feel like she's a pretty recognizable actor from, Narcos. And I think, was she in Goliath too, I think?
Yeah, she's Goliath.
And I think she's an incredible actor, so I would like to see her in a lot more. And I thought she was just solid in this too. So that's and not her first sort of reckoning with aliens. This is a horrible film, but she was in Cowboys and Aliens
Yep.
a while ago, so we got her going on.
Raul
But
Castillo as Guzman, who's this guy who's like a video. It seems like they got him because he was making YouTube videos about killing zombies
yep.
and like double, triple headshots, and so they recruited they recruited him for that, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yep.
And then he brings along a little crew with him, including Chambers and some other
Yep.
guy who like pieces out. And I wasn't. I mean, in retrospect, I'm not really sure that that was super necessary for the story, other than just to be like, yeah, not everybody's going to go for this. I don't know if you had a take on that.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that that was kind of um, um, I thought that that actually made kind of sense because one of the, and that's a little bit of a tongue in cheek thing. You have all these people kind of planning to go and do this crazy thing. I do think that it makes sense for a character to basically like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's
That's
absolutely
stupid.
bananas. So
Yeah.
I kind of liked that. And then I feel like we also have to talk about the sort of the alpha zombies too. So you've got the Zeus guy, who is basically a former soldier, and he is played by Richard Citrone. And then the Queen is also, and I will also say these two, particularly Zeus and the Queen, and I guess maybe one of their kind of generals, right?
Yeah.
Have probably the most elaborate out of the. There's other people, there's other zombies that you see up close, but these have more. Their makeup is just much more elaborate, and it's very,
Yeah.
it's kind of very clear that it's you know, clear that it's hours and hours and hours were spent on their makeup and their special effects.
They get a lot of close-ups.
Yeah, and they're like, you know, like almost like unending close-ups. And the queen is played by Athena Parampil. And I think to me anyway, it's very clear that she's got some kind of dance or like acrobat or like some kind of training, maybe parkour and other stuff. Like the way she moves, it's like, okay, this is somebody who's clearly done some of this physical stuff for a living. Oh, and look at that. Yes, she is a trained dancer. So there you go.
Hmm.
And I think that they definitely, in some ways, they are almost some weirdly like they are developed in this, despite having more guttural and screamy lines, but you kind of get a sense of who they are throughout this film. So
Yeah, a little bit.
a
Yeah.
little bit. I wish a little bit more of a backstory that you could understand, and that's one of my critiques of this. That I wish there was a little bit more given about this.
Oh,
And
that's so by design. You can tell that Snyder like
I
rebels
know.
in just putting out breadcrumbs, and even with his interviews before this movie came out, he's like, maybe those robots are there to monitor the situation. Like we have
Yeah,
no
yeah,
idea.
yeah. I think he's
Yeah.
just, he's being the Snyderist that he can possibly be in this. But what I will say is that, in terms of the storyline, the backstory with these zombies, this is of an alien origin. We had talked about this extensively because they had been basically doing teasers for this forever. And the effects that you can kind of, so it's like the usual like trope where it's like the army or whoever is transporting this dangerous thing and it gets out. And this is of alien origin. I think that there's clearly like some sense that there is something different going on with this. It's not a contagion film. It's definitely like something that's happening to evolve the human or
Yeah.
host it. Or it's like honestly, it's a little bit aliens like without the sort of parasitic nature, I guess, of aliens, but it's something that clearly is changing humans into something else. They're a lot stronger, and there's different levels of this, I guess. So
This.
if
Yeah.
you're gonna be if you're part of sort of the initial like parasitic infection or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, magic blue sparkly stuff of alien origin, I guess, is what it kind of looks like to me.
Appears to be.
Then you are sort of an alpha and capable of thought and planning, and you're not necessarily just taking people out, but you create kind of like drones, kind of like mindless shamblers is what they call them, which are more typical zombie-like behavior. They don't really do anything other than it seems like they kind of take orders from Zeus and maybe the Queen, but like they are not. They're definitely a lot more in the traditional zombie like world.
The Shamblers or the Alphas?
The Shamblers.
Yeah. Yeah. We only really see Shamblers in that one hotel scene where they're inside. Then I think most of the action is really Alphas versus Scott
Right.
Ward's team
Right.
as the movie progresses.
And then you've got, of course, the zombie animals and robots that they never really go into, which was kind of weird that they never ever talk about that at all. And again, I would say I suspect that if there is a director's cut, maybe you find out more. This is already like 2.5 hours though, just as an FYI. So I don't know, but then again, Justice League was like 4 hours. So,
Mm-hmm. No,
so
I think they're going to save a lot of this this stuff, this background for like things like the prequel that they're doing now and the animated series. There's plenty of time. They have plenty of time to milk this, all these Easter eggs and breadcrumbs that Snyder has put into this. So lots of space here. What did you think of the dialogue between the two soldiers driving the Humvee? I thought
I
it's
mean,
more of this like playing with the audience stuff where they're just like speculating on what it is that's in their payload, which is they're like, it's
yeah.
the staff of Ra, it's the Holy
Oh
Grail.
yeah, and it was very like Indiana Jones, and they make like those tongue cheek references. I thought that was kind of fun, and I thought that was that was like kind of a silly way to set it up, and it's also I think a little bit of a nod and a wink at the audience so that you kind of know exactly the film that you're walking into here, that you're not supposed to take it all that seriously, but it's supposed to be, and they're basically naming honestly like the plots of films that are very very summer blockbustery, right? So this is like exactly they're basically setting the audience up, which I thought was kind of fun.
Yeah. And there is also a scene when they drive through the initial checkpoint in the convoy. There are two glowing lights in the sky floating over the military base that zip off into the clouds as they drive through the checkpoint, which has been pointed out by people who are speculating about everything. But those are definitely UFOs, like in the first one of the first scenes of the movie, which is kind of bananas. So we got UFOs, check. And then and then the zombie comes out of the broken open payload when the inevitable and predictable car crash happens. Although a Hemet like that, the big truck, I don't know that it would explode quite so spectacularly. Those are pretty tough trucks. But there's also, I'm sure you noticed it, an MRAP in this
I
convoy.
did, I did.
They, however, don't use it at all as a combat vehicle, unlike Fear the Walking Dead, which cannot stop trying to employ it. And this series of scenes it's both funny because these two guys have a bit of a witty repartee, and their conversation in the car before the car accident is kind of amusing, and then when they run away, there's like a funny element right before they get killed, which I thought was neat. And I was like, this was hitting the right notes for me in terms of exciting and also amusing.
Yeah, no, I thought that it was a nice opening, and I enjoyed like the start of this, and also the transformation, just of the soldiers and how that went down, and the classic tropes where it's like they radio back and they're like, get away from the vehicle, and you've got that whole tension and lead up, and then of course people aren't getting away from the vehicle, and that's and then of course I don't want to say hilarity ensues, zombies ensue, a zombie plague ensues, and you've got a nice like scene where it sets up basically the whole montage of what happens with the soldier zombies looking over Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So
And then this
that's
montage takes us, so there's one thing that's happening in this montage that never gets explained or even referred to, I think. And that's this mom. The story, it's kind of like the story of the mom, I think. I mean, it doesn't start with that scene of her and the camper van and she's just shooting into this crowd of zombies in the suburbs.
Yep.
You recall the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
She's like saving her daughter, who is like a tween, and this woman is a brunette. She has shoulder length hair, and she's firing an M16. In the background, there's a big dude who has the silhouette of Dave Bautista, but I'm not really sure if it was him, but it definitely looks a lot like him, and they're together in future montage elements.
Right.
And so this woman goes from saving there. She's kind of like wearing a nice outfit, and her hair is like down, and then in future scenes, her hair is like in like, I don't know, dystopian Mad Max hairstyles, and she just continues to go through killing people. You get Vandero is in one of these sequences, like they're just using the saw to let some people out of a car, and then she realizes that they're bitten, and she shoots them both. I'm watching this, and I'm like, who is this lady going to be? And she's definitely going to be a major character in this movie, right? Like,
Nope.
but of course, yeah. As the scenes continue and progress, we have more of this group of people. We see Maria Cruz shooting a zombie and breaking it down from head to toe with a 50 cal, which I thought was an insane
Yep.
insane shot. Um, and then finally they get out of the encircled Las Vegas, but this lady and her daughter don't make it, and Scott Ward is very upset. But like, wow, this is, I mean, this is the thing you're referring to. This is something that Zack Snyder apparently just has like a really keen eye for, and knows how to do this kind of storytelling. But I definitely wanted to watch that more than once. After I got through with it, I was like, wow, what just happened there? And I need to obviously go back and see this again, because you're watching it as it's happening and you're like, oh, well, I'm sure I'll find out more about this lady and her daughter as the movie begins,
Yep. And no.
Yes and no.
And I feel like that was like a whole scene to basically set up like the loss and to make you and as I said, like I think it's just an art to be able to tell a story in this way, because you are kind of invested. As you said, I was also under the impression that this was going to be a major character, and I was taken a bit aback when suddenly she, like, her whole storyline from beginning to end is honestly like a few seconds long, but you learn so much about this particular character, and just visually they tell what's happened to her, like from the start of this to the end of this. She gets her daughter, and like it's really just sort of incredible that you're kind of invested in the character, and then she's taken out immediately. So it's like interesting. But I do think that probably that storyline was meant to give depth to Dave Bautista's character Scott, and some of the others, and what they went through, and you have to see that immense loss, and they even show obviously with him having to take out his wife with his daughter watching, and they show every single one of these characters just about. At least the main, it shows him, his daughter, Maria. Yes.
Yeah, Marie,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
mean in the montage? Yeah.
yeah. They show them all in the montage.
Actually, I don't know that his daughter is. I think that the scene where he's killing his wife and saving his daughter from her is actually a dream that he has after
Oh, okay.
Tanaka has come to him.
Okay,
So it's
sorry.
not a part of the montage, but it might as well be. But also, one of the stylistic things they're doing during this montage is they're holding a photo of their families in front of
Right,
like
maybe
a
that's why I got confused with it.
backdrop.
But you can see like that they had their family. There's like this weird, like, honestly, it's like an Avedon kind of photo thing where they're showing who they were before and who they are now. And that also was an interesting tool to show like what was happening. So I really enjoyed that whole setup. I thought was great, and I think that the one criticism I have for this film is that whole setup was much more storytelling than you then get later. With the script and with the development of the characters, I feel like the script probably could have used a little punching up and a little bit of depth to it. Because you can be cheesy and schlocky with zombie films, but you still want to care about the characters, and I didn't care as much as I wanted to. You know what I mean? I don't know. I felt like I didn't like. It felt like there was a little bit of depth missing, and there specifically, and again, this was done green screen, and there's an explanation for it. But the Tig Notaro, Peter's character, it feels like there is a little bit more of a backstory there that they don't necessarily dive into, and that there's things that you're supposed to be putting weight on. That obviously this character is just usually out for herself, and there's definitely things that they're implying with some of the lines that Peter says. And I do think Tig Notaro does a great job and is also hilarious no matter what. So there is like a funny bit to this and to this kind of a tropey character, but I feel like they could have done just a bit more with it to make it hit better, and it fell a little flat. And I felt that with a lot of, and I felt like that with a lot of the characters too. Like even the Garrett Dillahunt character, and again, this is a great cast, so we know that they have the chops to do it. And even Dave Bautista's character, Scott, like you're supposed to see that he's sort of this paternal leader, but you don't, and he does a great job, but there's not enough depth to the script and to the interaction between the characters to really feel that dedication to him. And they're they imply things with some of the ways that some of the scenes between him and his daughter and him and Maria, they're implying some things, but you're not getting to, like, I don't feel like it hits as a solid blow. Like when
by the time Maria is giving him a hard time after his daughter has already given him a hard time for like
right.
being, too cut off or whatever, or emotionally unavailable. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. They want to give Dave Bautista some like emotional scenes or something. Maybe, I don't know. But it was too much. Like, one of those was okay. The second one felt like egregious. It was just too much. It was just too much to throw at this poor Scott Ward in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Like, you want to have these conversations? Let's wait till we're out of Las Vegas. Was I know they need to do this for pacing and stuff, but that was for me. I was just by the second admonishment that he was getting, I was just like kind of over it.
Well,
Um,
and the admonishment during a pretty high stress, high stakes part, like it didn't make sense. I agree with you.
no,
Like
neither of these.
where it's happening, it doesn't make sense that they would be getting into this at this point.
No.
Maybe before, maybe after, but definitely not in the middle of this heist. And it seemed, I actually thought, and I know like pacing and they're trying to like take you from the action to like these moments, but I felt like it honestly made it seem like it dragged on longer, and felt a little disjointed because of it. So this is the part of the storytelling that I was like, yeah, this could have been sort of polished up a little bit.
But frankly, for the movie that this is, those were the only points where I was like actually disappointed. The rest of the time, it was kind of hitting the notes that I was expecting it to hit, but also surprising me at times too.
Right. I had to ask
So
you. So you said at some point that you were watching this at night and you were like, had to stop. And
yeah,
I will admit, and I'm
you know,
not,
you know what part this was.
no,
You can
honestly,
you can imagine. Okay,
no.
it's when Garrett Dillahunt's perfectly cast evil. Anyway, I've got a whole theory that I want to tell you about his character too. But it's when he's thrown the chem light the wrong way, and Chambers is about to crawl through the tunnel of zombies. I was just like, I'm in bed. My wife is sleeping next to me. It's midnight 30 or whatever. I'm like, I know there's going to be a jump scare, and I don't want to wake her up.
Oh, okay. Because I was just sort of like, I don't know. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I guess, yeah, that makes much more sense in that context. Because I was like, I'll admit, I did not find this thing really
It's
terrifying.
not a horror movie, right?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
it's
it's
a
more
thriller
action
slash yeah
thriller or
action movie.
something. But anyway, okay, well that makes a lot more sense because I actually kept being like, what part is he talking about?
I,
So,
I'm just gonna bust out my theory here. And that's not really even a theory, but it's more of an observation. But the also so Chambers, by played by Samantha Wynn. Samantha Wynn is like a martial artist. She's a real badass lady. She is playing Chambers, who is Guzman's buddy, who's also turns out to be a complete killing machine. And
oh
after
yeah,
that
I
scene
should
starts
also
off,
point out that she makes appearances in just about. I mean, she makes appearances in
every
a
Zack
lot of
Snyder
Zack
movie.
Snyder films. So she was in the
Yeah, she's
300.
been
She
some
was in
Amazons. She's
Yeah,
been
yeah. So she's been
yeah,
in a lot of stuff, and she's also a stunt person. So she's
yeah.
definitely like, and you can tell like she's totally a badass.
She has such an amazing send off. I mean, and it's protracted. Like she kills
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many zombies. She's doing such great work,
Yep.
and I was really happy with the way that scene ended up. I obviously when the scene began, I was like, can't do it. Got to check out. I'll come back tomorrow. And then I kind of wish I had stuck around because she does such great work in that scene.
Yep.
However, the red bandana that she wears reminds me a lot of the character Vasquez from Aliens.
Oh yeah, and I think it's a
The character
deliberate.
that
I think it's
Garrett
a.
Dillahunt is playing
Uh huh.
is a complete Burke or yeah Burke, except that he's more of a shooter. Like, but he it's almost like a parallel sort
Uh
of.
huh. I think it's
I'm gonna
deliberate.
I'm gonna betray everybody, and then the scene with the helicopter at the end is straight out of. They get to the top of the hotel, and Bishop has taken the drop ship off of the platform, and they're like, Bishop, you jerk! And then he comes back and takes them off the top of the building. I mean, there are more than a few parallels or direct
Right.
references to the movie Aliens here that I was like, holy crap, this is actually happening. But it was a lot of fun to see, and I agree with you. I think it was deliberate. Like you can't put that red bandana around a badass lady's head
And not
and
think of
not and
Vasquez.
not be like that is 100% Vasquez right
Right.
there.
Right.
So those were all really fun for me to notice.
I'm sure there have been, and yes, there are. There's a lot of articles about this. Just
Oh, there
about,
are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just did a quick Google. I noticed it, and again, I'm a huge Aliens fan. I love that. I love that whole. That franchise. I think is like one of my favorite things. But yeah, there is somebody actually. We should throw it. Somebody put something up on Medium, I think,
Hmm.
and the title is Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead: A Tribute to Aliens? Question mark. And all that's missing are the facehuggers, and they kind of go point by point. And there's a lot of spoilers in this, but it's kind of fun.
Okay,
So
I need to read that.
yeah, it's just, I guess I should have read this. Oh, and one of the things that they point out is that the main character Ripley has all these horrible nightmares. So that actually is something like the Dave
Scott
Bautista,
Ward is
Scott Ward is
Ripley.
having nightmares. So
Yeah.
I will say he doesn't look as cool in his outfit as Ripley does with her gun-toting moment, but it's
Well,
still pretty
yeah.
good.
I mean, part of the payoff for that moment is that she's not a gun toter, right?
Yeah.
She was like a vice pilot or something, or she was a freighter
Yep.
pilot,
Yep.
wasn't she?
Yep.
And so for her then to suddenly be like, now I'm a Marine, it's like, yeah. But Scott Ward, of course, is always a badass, and so all of this is like more gunned up than the other versions. I mean, even Vasquez, I don't think could have held her own against that many zombies like Chambers does.
Right. And I will also point out that gun-toting scene in the elevator with Ripley, where
Hmm.
she's like putting the guns on herself and like waiting to come out, is like probably one of the best like moments I think in filmmaking in terms of like horror films and things like that. It's just a really well done scene. So,
Mm.
just as an aside, one of my faves. So, yeah. So that's a thing, and I would
So
say,
yeah, that was a whole thing. So there's scenes from the refugee camp. There's this whole sort of subplot of this film, and actually I'll say another area of this film where I was disappointed was Sean Spicer being involved in this project at any point. But he plays a talking head who is clearly like a Fox News
yeah,
jerk
yeah.
who's arguing to nuke the refugee camp. I feel like it wasn't 100% sure, but and then Scott Ward's daughter Kate is a volunteer at this refugee camp, and she has these interactions with this family, this woman named, oh god, Gita, and her two children, and that's kind of like how they know the coyote. The Gita character, I mean, that's how you get Kate to enter the hot zone, but spoiler alert, did she die in the helicopter crash?
I think so. They never really like show, but like
Everybody else you see is dead, so
right. So
except for her.
I think we only saw like, yeah, so I think only the daughter makes it out. At least that's what's implied. And then the reference that Scott Ward makes is that, that Kate is still supposed to get Gita's kids out of the camp. Although I also have a question about that because I thought that the camps were so close to Las Vegas that I feel like they may not have survived. So
They
I
were
guess
evacuated. They were all going to
okay,
Barstow.
okay. I didn't know. It felt like because they had moved up the timeline that it might be that they'd been destroyed, but that was that
Yeah.
was actually one hole in the story that I just
Well,
wish they had like kind of closed up or at least had
it was
some.
it was fairly clear to me because Cummings is telling a couple
Right.
of people that this is the last bus.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
get on
That's
it,
true.
you're gonna be dead.
That's true. So anyway, there is, but then they show the kids that have not gotten on the bus. So I guess that was where my confusion was. But and again, this is also, it's clearly touching upon some political things currently going on. So to have Sean Spicer show up in this whole talking heads thing, and for CNN, and to have these sort of debates, and I mean honestly, even with some of the things that they're doing in the camps with the temperature checks, I mean, how can you
Oh
not think
God,
about
triggering.
how can you not think about what's happening, and so that I think he's clearly trying to make some kind of a comment on some of those things.
Those
But
scenes must have been shot in 2019.
right,
Like
right, but still.
yeah.
So yeah, so we've got some of those things going on too in this. And I don't know, like, if you're going to make those commentaries, what commentary exactly are you making, right? Like, so it's a little bit like, oh, well, we don't want to be stopped from doing this destruction because of the objection of all these other people about this destruction. So we're going to move up the timeline to do it before we can be stopped. I think that that's a very clear, in your face reference, right? So I don't know. So there's definitely some of that going on, but not enough of it that it really makes sense. Like, not to the extent that clearly George Romero's Dawn of the Dead is a commentary on consumerism and military and all this other stuff. Like, I don't think it's as like in your face as some of that stuff, but it's definitely
That's
there throughout this.
Yeah. This part of my thing is that this stuff doesn't really have any place in this movie, or it doesn't need
No,
to.
and it
It doesn't
doesn't
need to
need
be in this
to.
movie. So like either do it all the way and do it right, or just get off of that.
Right,
You
right.
don't need these yes, okay, like some of these scenes and the points that the woman who Sean Spicer is talking to is making are valid, which is like, yeah, there's inequity is going to, equity is like this casualty on in these refugee camps. Like anybody who is a person of color, et cetera, is going to be, considered um, like they could just stay in these camps forever as far as the establishment is concerned. So yeah, but again, I don't think that this movie needed to really go
Right, go
there.
there.
So
I think, and that was the one part. And I thought if they had maybe dispensed with that and just focused a little bit more and not tried so hard to sort of, to me, shove that stuff in, I think it would have been a better film if you'd focused a little bit more on the character development and the stories of these characters. So that was one part that I was like, I wish they had done this a little bit more. So, sorry, what else was I going to
well, so
say?
he's assembled his team, which includes this safecracker Dieter, and he's just a really enjoyable character. He's kind of got this light to him, where he's talking about the safe, and it's named the safe that they have to break into is named after Wagner's opus, the Götterdämmerung. Uh, and the rest of the team, like this woman Maria, who is this mechanic, and Scott Ward that's the first person he goes to recruit. Um, it's kind of interesting too to see like Tanaka offers him $50 million to get $200 million out of Las Vegas, and then he's like, and you can pay your team out of the 50 million that I'm going to give you, and then it's kind of interesting to see how he offers each person a different sum of money.
Yep, there's that.
Uh,
And this is a little bit, even building the team, this is a little bit of a like competency porn because you kind of see why each of these people, and it's almost like their level of competence is equal to the amount of money that he offers them or whatever value he places them in terms of the team. So Tig Notaro, because she's the pilot, gets a pretty substantial sum. And also, these are people that he has specific relationships with. And so, except for Dieter, but obviously, Dieter is a pretty important member just because of what he is
yeah.
going to do, but yet he still isn't offered as much money as say Maria or the others. So
And Guzman, I think he offers Guzman like
yeah,
200K,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is still a lot of
So
money
it
for,
is,
they're
but
saying it's like one day's work or whatever.
however, it's
But
one
then,
day's
and then
work.
Guzman hires two other people out of his own cut, which I thought was interesting. And
Yeah,
half of me was expecting him to say, and now we're going to take all the money, the whole Treasure of Sierra Madre kind of
yeah. I
situation.
thought that they were gonna go for a double cross like that. I also thought that that might be happening when Tig Notaro is clearly, especially with the Dill Hunt character, where she's like, "Are we really just gonna like not incentivize us to like kill this guy so he's not, doing what he's doing?" And I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing, so I just thought that was interesting.
Hmm.
But and it does make sense. So I was like, "There's going to be a double cross at some point with one of these characters," and it didn't really fully. I mean,
Doesn't Well, it
it,
doesn't take long for him to totally burke Chambers.
well,
So
right. So that's
he
there.
actually like locks a door. It's so aliens, right? He locks
Yep.
Chambers in with a bunch of zombies, and she still comes out. That was a little disappointing too. Was that it doesn't look like she's that far away from them, and they're
No.
like, "She's done. Let her go." And I'm like, just kill all those zombies that are around her. She
Right.
can take care of herself.
She
I don't know.
probably, and she seems to be doing a pretty good job of it. So yeah, no, so there's that part. And also, I mean, it does become clear later because I was just like, okay, so they're going to get this money. I don't know how much sense this makes because you have to have so much trust. And, clearly you're sending a team of people who really, if money is motivating them that much, you have to be very careful about a double cross, which is obviously
Hmm.
why the Dill Hunt character is there to kind of keep an eye on things. However, it feels like there has to be more than this given the stakes, and there is obviously more to this, which is about figuring out how to sort of have a control over like an alpha army or whatever it might be, and that's obviously more about what the motivation is to go in and do this.
It's kind of crazy to think once you realize that that was Tanaka's end game. Like, why not just send them in to do that? But he doesn't want to pay them out of his own pocket. I guess he can
Yeah,
pay them out of
maybe.
his vault. So, but they could have been in and out,
Right.
really,
It seems,
right?
and more successful, right? More.
Yeah.
And so, and not only has he sent this team in, he sent multiple teams in. And I actually kind of liked the whole
Well,
callback, like that this is like actually a time loop, which I thought was
yeah.
pretty funny.
Zack
Um,
Snyder has said like, yeah, that's basically them. and that each time they've gone in, they've gotten a little further. So he's like, when they find the blueprints and there's a bunch of bodies around that table, that's the team again. And when they find more bodies in the vault, that's also the team. I mean, it's he doesn't say that that's actually what's happened, but he's like, and what if,
Yeah, I know. He's
because
just doing.
he's not gonna be very specific, but
Yeah,
it's
he just
that's just
likes.
another element.
It's just again, you if you had focused a little bit more on some of these other storytelling things, I think it would have been a stronger, more fun film. But yeah, he had to throw that stuff in. I mean, I love the fact that he's such a nerd and clearly into sci-fi films that this is the stuff that he's throwing out there and trying to get in there. But it's a lot to fit into a film like this, so you have to like kind of pick and choose what you're going to do. And I think it would have been a cleaner, better, more impactful story had he not done a couple of these things. And so that's, I think it's funny, and I think that specific idea is kind of funny, especially when you have them lay it out like that. But
Hmm.
and very almost also very video gamey kind of, right? So and like I also thought again another Alien film, which I truly think didn't get enough fanfare when it came out. Like the film with Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah,
I
Edge of
thought
Tomorrow.
Edge of
That
Tomorrow.
movie has only gotten better with time, and it definitely did not do as well as it deserved in the
It didn't,
theaters.
and so I also felt like that was a little bit of a callback to this, where in this they were sort of that was a bit of a callback
Yeah.
to that, which is yet another alien invasion kind of film. So I thought that there's certainly a theme there, but he's almost too clever for his own good to try to like bring that into it. But
Well, he's got it. I mean, I keep saying this, but there's a chance. Almost all of these actors are billed as playing themselves in the animated series, so it's not just going forwards in time. It might all be prequel.
right, and
So
we'll see some of it. We'll
maybe
see
we'll
some
get to
of it.
see some more of it. Yeah, like the only person who I haven't seen, I haven't looked at absolutely everybody, but Garrett Dillahunt does not appear to be billed in the animated series, but Omari Hardwick, Dave Bautista, others
But
are.
this is the thing, though. You have to basically review a film on its merits, right?
You're right. You can't.
So
Yeah.
whether these things happen or not, you still have to sort of judge this on its merits and at its just it alone. And so that does bother me a little bit because I would like part of me just was like, I wish they had just kind of cleaned this up a little bit. So anyway, but so they're going in and they have their whole team. Everybody is very skilled in what they do, except, and I mean, even Dieter, though Dieter is not as skilled at killing zombies. They kind of go in and have all of this sort of, they have the coyote that basically knows that this weird thing is happening with the zombies, that there's the differences between the alphas and the shamblers. She understands their rules of the game, which, I think it makes sense that she's been going in long enough that she gets it, and they have to give them kind of like a sacrificial lamb, and they'll leave them alone. And that they are very interested in kind of doing their own thing. And, I like it's really funny to me because like I will admit to you, I was like, oh God, is he going to bring in a zombie baby the minute that they had the king and the queen kind of doing their crazy sexy stuff together? I was like, oh no, is this gonna be he loves zombie babies. We saw Dawn of the Dead, he did
Yeah,
that.
we did.
And I was like, it's gonna happen, and yes they did. I'm not quite sure what the mechanism for this zombie baby is. Also, again, a little alien, I suppose, that the human body is like a host or the dead human body or whatever. So I thought that was a little, strange. What did you think about that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I am sure he's wanting to do something different. He's doing something different. These zombies clearly have like their hair is growing. We
yep,
see Zeus changes from like a high and tight to long hair
yep,
as in the course of the film. This woman, the queen, is apparently pregnant. She doesn't look pregnant at all, and that baby is pretty big when he rips it out of her later on. Spoiler alert. She doesn't look pregnant at all, like I'm saying, and she's his like welcome mat for Dead Las Vegas too. I mean, you would think
there'd be a lot of risk involved in doing something like
why
that.
not have
So,
any of these other alphas be that person? I mean, maybe
right.
she's just the smartest and best, and obviously in terms of like just efficiency of running this movie, they want her to have a significant role, and
Right.
and and so there you go. I guess you can knock out two birds with one stone there, but
Right. But the
Little
other,
sketchy.
it is a little sketchy. And then the other part that I found, like, again, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I wish they had tightened up this storyline a little bit, is that clearly, so not only does the coyote know that these things exist, but the Garrett, I shouldn't keep calling him the Garrett
Martin
Dillahunt, the Martin character
or
is
Burke.
Burke, whatever you want to call him, is very much aware of this too, and that's his whole purpose for going in is that he's gonna basically get one of these or capture one of these and or enough of one of these to make a new little like zombie army for somebody. And so he knows enough of their mechanisms too, and he's seen enough of them that part of me, like even in sort of how he's hunting the queen and how he does this, to me it kind of doesn't, like he would have just, why would you continue even into the casino to get, like if your purpose is to do this, why not then get the heck out, because you kind of know that they're going to hear her, and that they're going to come and explore, that Zeus is going to come and try to like, and then once he does,
That's
all
true. That
like it's
he's
sort of like all there's no more truce at that point. And also, why leave the body of the zombie queen out there for all to find? You could, I mean, I'm not saying you're gonna have time to build like a grave, but you can at least disguise it enough that they won't discover it. But maybe they have more of a sense of smell or something that they'll discover it. But my point is that if he knows that is the reason behind this, and he now has the goal of that,
he
why
should
go
just
into
leave.
the casino, right?
He's closer to the exit where they cut off her head. Yeah, they should have left immediately.
Right. So I was just troubled by
Well,
that.
they don't have a riot anymore. I think they needed the helicopter. I guess that's the
Okay.
reason why
Okay, maybe.
they have to stay, because all the buses are gone. But they could have just, I don't know. He could have had a car
Something.
placed there, right? He has resources. She can still get out through the container wall.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point. Well, I guess it also is good that it goes the way it does, because he gets to be even more double crossy,
Yeah,
and
I
he
know.
goes out he goes out in a great death scene too.
Oh, he does. And I did kind of like that, so again, this is all spoilers all the time. Maybe we should mark that for people at the beginning. We should have probably. But in any case, he gets to have a great death by zombie tiger. And I did think
Yeah,
that
Garrett Dillahunt in the behind the scenes said that's not the first time he was killed by a tiger in a movie. Do you
yeah,
remember, do you know what he was talking about?
I don't
What
know.
other? Certainly wasn't Walking Dead. I'm just like, what else? I mean, he's done a lot, so it might be hard to drill down. But so apparently he did his own stunts for that scene too, and even in the interview and behind the scenes, he mentions that his neck hurts. Like he was getting thrown all over the place.
Oh, I think he's in like a he was in a film called Burning Bright in 2010.
Hmm.
And they're trapped in a house with a hungry tiger brought in these like there was like a hungry tiger in the house. So maybe that's what he's talking about.
I mean, makes sense.
I will also point out that this particular film, Burning Bright, also stars Meatloaf. So it's a quality film.
Oh God. I mean, well, Fight Club.
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying it's got to have like a level of cheesiness if it's got Meatloaf in it. So, but anyway, there you go. There you go.
There you go.
But
The safe cracking scene. Let's. I mean, I know we're kind of jumping around a lot on this movie, but there's some great set pieces. Then the safe cracking scene is good. It provides all this opportunity for Omari Hardwick and Matthias Schweighofer as Vanderohe and Ludwig Dieter, respectively. They kind of form this buddy relationship where Vanderohe is like his mentor in like survivalism, I guess, because he teaches them how to shoot, and et cetera, before they go in. And
now their rapport, I believe. And
it's good, right? They have good chemistry.
Yep, and I do believe their relationship building, and that's the thing is like when you see it in sort of like so successful, it's like why couldn't they have done this? And again, maybe stuff got cut out, and we'll see things in the director's cut that was sort of built in. And knowing Zack Snyder, that's probably definitely the case. But in their particular little like rapport, and they're definitely sort of the comic relief. So they're using their scenes as a way to. First of all, you show their bonding and things like that. There's a little competency porn with Dieter and his whole safe cracking ability. So you're like, that's kind of enjoyable to watch and see how good he is at that. Just as good as Vanderhoe is at survival. So that's kind of a fun thing. I
And
liked those
also
scenes.
carting in the shamblers to
Yep.
trigger all the traps was a really enjoyable sort of
Again,
sequence.
and using the shamblers in this like comedic way,
Yeah.
I thought
And he
was
heats up that hand in the
Yep, yep,
microwave.
yep. So there's that I feel like their sort of rapport was some of the most successful in terms of the relationships between characters.
Yeah.
So they've got that going on. But okay, can we also talk about the whole plan? If this, aside from Burke, like the whole plan for this movie is for them to get this money out and to get enough money out that you're gonna keep an enormous amount for yourself. You're gonna give the money to Tanaka. You're gonna pay off everybody on your team, and money is really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And also you're in like an extraordinarily risky situation, and you know that to be able to get this out, you probably have to have a better plan than one guy carrying a bunch of duffel bags, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an odd lack of planning. Did you like what was your like that was my thought about it even when they were first loading up. I'm like, wouldn't you want to like split this all up between people so that, not that they're necessarily carrying like all the money, but if you're going to get out like enough money to pay off the guy that wanted this venture in the first place, wouldn't you have to have a better plan about physically moving it to the
Yeah.
helicopter, right?
They don't have a good plan for that. And that's a good point. I don't think that they ever even got close to getting all the money out of the safe,
No.
because at the very at the end of the safe scene, Vandero and Dieter go back to the safe, saying to each other, "The money," because everybody else is already leaving with the two duffel bags that they got out, right? Or maybe it was more
Right.
than two.
But it was
But
not
yeah, there's I
enough.
think I don't. Yeah, they were never going to get out of this with enough cash. Dave Bautista somehow packs some into his pants somewhere to pull out at the end of the movie. I think that was that stack of money that he found upstairs initially. But yeah, so they never even got close to pulling off the heist because Burke and Lily kind of screwed them over by doing this other plan and then not telling them about it and not hiding the body, like you said.
Yep. So, and then we have, all these sort of, because there's so many characters and you're showing all these like different scenes, and you got to get up to you've got to build the tension up to the sort of big set pieces at the end. I think they get there, but I do think that editing certain things, it felt like the pacing was a little bit off towards the end. And I do think it was thrown off specifically by the scenes you called out before, with Dave Bautista and Maria and Dave Bautista and, Scott Ward and Kate and Scott Ward and Maria, and both of them have the same theme of these like weird conversations in the middle of this clutch situation.
And it's the same argument. Like both
Yeah,
of them are saying, you left me alone," and it's like, yeah, okay, well, clearly I've got PTSD, and clearly we're in the middle of a zombie city. Can we
right.
please just put a pin in
Right.
this?
So that felt strange, and then and of course they have this whole like slight resolution between him and Maria where they're gonna maybe make a go of it after, and of course, she gets dispatched
Oh
pretty
my
quick.
God, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
Like that, oof, that spine.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Give me the
And
willies.
yeah, that was creepy, and the effect on it was pretty good too. And so I think that was sort of a deliberate, manipulation of the audience to make you feel like, oh my god. But also it was an incredible effect. So that was like a horribly creepy and nasty way to go. But kudos to the special effects peeps on that one.
I do feel like though that scene is also a bit of a symptom of how they they feel a little bit too casual and relaxed down there. And
Right.
part of that symptom is these conversations that they keep having with Scott Ward. But like you're trying to get into an elevator in a zombie hotel and
Right.
you're not going to have guns up when the elevator doors open. Like
Right.
I feel
That
like
felt weird.
you just would, unless they're feeling completely secure for no reason that
Right,
I
and
could understand.
that felt kind of strange, and so it's a little choppy in terms of the action. On again, enjoyable, but a little bit like unlike other films where I was feeling the tension. I just felt like all of it got bled away by those conversations, and then I was kind of like, well, I just don't even know what to think anymore. And even when they get to the roof with Tig Notaro. I did like the idea that she's like Tig Notaro is like basically telling them, yeah, everything's all set with the chopper, but it's like a total mess. And
It's completely on fire. Yeah,
yep, yep, that was
those
pretty.
were funny little cutaways. I
Those were
like
nice
those.
scenes, and I liked those. And then, but I felt like they overdid the chopper roof scenes, so they have two of them.
Yeah.
And they get away once, and I think that's supposed to make you kind of think that that's going to happen again. I don't think anybody in the audience would have been surprised with the Zeus character running and jumping on the chopper the second time round. But it's both, it's almost like the same scene ish for both of those, which I thought was a little weird.
Well, in the first one, he doesn't jump on the
No, he
helicopter
doesn't.
because he's
But
too busy trying to save the head
the
of the
head of his
queen.
queen.
In the second one, he has to get on the chopper because that's a direct analog to the mother alien getting on the dropship.
I know. But it just felt like they were repeating. I don't know. It felt like a repeat for
Yes,
for
it was
things.
repetitive.
And then
And the fact that between one helicopter leaving the Bly, I guess, and flying to the Olympus, the fact that the zombie army was able to keep pace with them and get there almost at the same time as Scott Ward, it was kind of crazy. Like they flew there in a helicopter, and yet the zombies managed to like run there just as fast. It was kind of crazy.
And I do think that the sort of end scene in the destruction with the helicopter and the. I thought that there were some nice moments with Tig Notaro. I mean, she's injured and flying out and like scraping the blood off the windscreen to be able to see that the bomb is heading. So I thought that tension was pretty good. And I thought that was well done. All of the scenes in the helicopter I thought were choreographed, and that tension was great. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that Zack Snyder excels at. And I mean, look, if you're watching a Zack Snyder zombie film, I mean, we all know the end of Dawn of the Dead. Nobody actually makes it. So
I think that was still remains to be seen. Post-credit scene, you don't really see what happens, other than they drop the camera.
Well, right. But my point is that, most people are going to die. It's a zombie film.
Yeah.
And he, and I do think that the scenes, and especially the end scenes with Scott Ward were really cute and well done. The whole thing, which his theme all on, is talking to his daughter about starting up a food truck and coming up with various food ideas. And this was just like kind of a very bittersweet ending with them. And I also thought like a very well done scene, just in terms of that whole tension between the father and daughter, resolving it, and then tragically having to take him out because he's going to become an alpha. And I think that with all the destruction around, and he's like strapped into that seat still, or like kind of stuck. And his turning I thought was really, really good. And with everything, I mean, the one piece is that we don't really know what happened to Gita. And we see that Tig Notaro has died, that Peters has died. But,
she has a prop through her.
Yeah. So we got that going on. But this was, and of course, this isn't the complete end because it can't be. And we've got the continuation with Vanderhoof towards the end of this film, just sort of like being, we think everything's, and of course, is again classic Zack Snyder, where everything's going to be okay because he's got the cash and he like survived the blast because he was stuck in the safe. I don't know how you would get out of such a safe if it had actually, survived this whole thing. But he did, and he goes off he's going to Mexico City. But this is the one piece where I thought the storytelling. So we've got Kate, who has survived, hopefully without any kind of radioactive sickness, right?
And there's a CH-47 coming to get her, which is kind of random too.
Also random, right? Because why would they even know, right? Like, but maybe they've been paying attention to that. Who knows? But in any case, so she's definitely survived. But then we've got Vanderhoof, who has survived in the most unlikely of ways. He basically got locked in the safe by Dieter. And he's got a pile of money. He's got all the money or pretty much all the money that was in there. And you're like, oh, great. He's going to live his life. I don't think this was a shock that he had actually been bitten.
I mean, you don't see him get bitten in the action scenes where he's like going knuckles Knuckles with Zeus. He
Okay,
doesn't. There's no bite scene.
so my question for this, was this a callback to Carl? Because Carl getting bitten, nobody saw him get bit, and then suddenly there's like this noticeable thing on him,
If the
right?
bite was on his chest, then yeah, sure, it would be a Carl reference. But I
Yeah.
don't think
You
I
don't
don't
think it
think they
was? All
even
right.
wanted to go there. I mean, the thing is, like, he gets out of the vault, and then he's standing in irradiated downtown Las Vegas, and that should
Right.
have killed him. There are fan theories that because he'd already been bitten,
He
that
survived
makes him
that.
immune. But
And he's been bitten by an alpha, so technically he will be able to sort of pass this on and be an alpha and like this is the whole idea.
mhm.
But my big criticism about this is that you have now lived in, everybody is aware of the whole zombie thing. You've lived in this world for however long. The flight attendants on the private flight that he basically barrels his way into and pays with an enormous amount of cash, even though it's
Mhm.
somebody's private plane.
Mhm.
But they are well aware. I think everybody is well aware of what the symptoms are, and they
Yeah.
say that he feels cold. They say they have to notify the captain. Again, we don't see exactly what happens to him. He's just kind of locked in the bathroom, so maybe they're prepped and waiting for him outside with some gun to take him down.
That'd be
But
pretty funny.
but to me, it's like, no, it's not a mystery what's going on with him. They know it's not the champagne, or let's hope they know. And I think it's left ambiguous a little bit. I think that there
Hmm.
is like some indication that they know what's happened or that he's been bitten or something. But this was, a nice sort of lead into a sequel, I suspect,
Hmm.
where he's going to be dropped in a population center that's going to be pretty hard to contain if he gets out and is allowed to spread this around. And I like as I said, I love this actor. I think Omari Hardwick is like, I think he does a really good job at this. The whole realization of what's going on is great. But I feel like they would have taken him out pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah, probably. I think this was your Romero reference where he's able to do the immoral thing just because he can ply his way through it with stacks of $200 or $200,000 at a time. But we'll see. Yeah, that's what the animated series might be for. I don't know if they're going to do post or pre. It seems like it's going to be a lot of prequels because of how many dead characters are billed as playing their existing people. But yeah, by the end of this, I was just like, yeah, this has been fun. I've definitely got some questions still, like what happened to Gita and other things, and how is Kate Ward going to be able to just like go in and free her daughters when she's not related to them at all?
Yep.
Lots of things, but it was definitely a wild ride and
Yeah, it
good times.
is. And I would totally watch the sequel where Kate basically is the one who knows what's going on and maybe it becomes that character to go and take out Vanderho or going to take out whatever alphas are going to be happening in Mexico City. So I would totally watch that sequel. I think it would be fun. But we'll have to see what happens. So,
Yeah.
and especially given the reception, it wouldn't shock me if there was a sequel. Though, given the timing and how long it took them to shoot this, who knows what that would look like. But I hope that maybe it happens, and I'm looking forward to seeing the prequel and the other things that they've got going on surrounding this particular storyline.
Yeah. I would say some other standout elements of this movie were the choreography. There was some great fight scenes. There was some great slow-mo Zack Snyder shooting
Oh yeah,
stuff. So there were yeah, it was like we've said at the beginning, it was a spectacle. There was so much to look at. It was definitely overwhelming, and there were some scenes that definitely benefited from a second glance.
yeah. I
So
thought that the
and yeah,
casino choreography, especially when they're on the way out with the money, was a
yeah,
really good one.
yeah.
We've got a lot of Dave Bautista, jumping on tables, being like all powerful. He seems to have superpowers at some point.
Right. There's that
Uh,
one table when he throws it and it has like speed effects.
yeah,
You're
it's
like,
sort of
wait,
like,
how
well,
strong
what's
is this
happening?
guy?
What's happening here?
Yeah.
And I do enjoy the whole like trying to make him mild mannered with the prop glasses and stuff like that. That's pretty funny. So, But and I do think that and again, these are the things that Zack Snyder excels at, are these big set pieces, beautiful choreography and fight choreography. It makes it look like a dance. I definitely think that the people involved in this, and a lot of them are people he's worked with before, have that sort of physicality that looks really good in these fight scenes. And I think that the makeup was, I liked the makeup on the zombies, especially the alphas. I thought was very good. So I think that, you know, overall, I really enjoyed this as a spectacle blockbuster piece. Just probably would have honed it a little bit to make it more as impactful as Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
feelings overall? Like, what's your
It
sort of
was a
take?
lot of fun. I was not disappointed. I kind of went into this thinking that it would be the way it was, and I was definitely, I enjoyed it almost 100%, like except for those couple of things that I mentioned.
Yeah.
It was firing away, and I loved all the references, and I loved
Oh,
all
me
the
too.
little breadcrumbs, and the Snyder being super Snyder.
Oh no,
So
it's so much. It was a lot of fun, and I will say that I was very worried because this did happen with World War Z. Just sort of the amount of editing and re-editing, and
mm,
then hearing like stories. Oh, these things aren't quite working, so they have to go back. And I will say the result of this, for me, for this kind of a film, was much more satisfactory. I definitely, you know, I have to nitpick because this is just who I am. but I think that visually it was a really fun film. I think that the actors were great. Again, just wish there was a little more input in the storytelling script when you actually have people talking to each other. But, you know, I think that this was definitely exactly what it should have been.
yeah.
So, and I'm glad that they're getting success with this. I actually think that the making of is definitely worth watching and sort of fun. And then just kind of seeing how they did the world building was cool. And one of the things that they say in the making of little mini documentary is that, you know, Vegas is a very well known place. Everybody has an idea about it, even if you haven't been to it. And trying to make it both deteriorating but also recognizable was a challenge. And, you know, how much do you have the city deteriorate, you know, like in the time that this has been happening? What's been happening in this to make it look like this? And also even with some of the makeup effects, like that Vegas, it has like a very dry climate, so that will have a different effect on the decomp and stuff like that. So I thought that that stuff was all kind of fun to hear how they were thinking about it and visualizing it and how they made that happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we've said what we need to say. This was good. We next time can HA talk about the next episode of Fear the Walking Dead, or we can take another week to finish up that season with the last two episodes, and instead review a different project, which I would like to propose.
Okay, well, that's fine. But do you have a different project to talk about?
So one that we've not seen, I mean, there's a lot still out there, but yeah, one that came to my attention again recently is Slither.
Ugh, no, I can't. I can't do it
Why not?
because it's like got snakes. Can't do it.
It's a small town taken over by an alien plague, turning residents into zombies of all forms and all forms of mutant monsters. And it's directed by James Gunn, and it has Nathan Fillion.
I know it does. I know it does, but I don't know. Okay, I guess we can watch it. Ugh, it's so gross.
Michael
All
Rooker.
right. We can do it, even though I'll be freaked out by it. But yes, I guess we can watch it. Do you hear
Okay,
how much under duress I am to watch this
you
thing?
are, and that's okay. That's not. Yeah, if you don't want to, if you really don't want to, we don't have to. We can find
No,
something
no,
else.
we can watch it. I
It's
just,
mostly that I'm trying to procrastinate watching Fear the Walking Dead.
well, it makes sense to wrap it up with the last two. So why don't we do this film and then we'll finish up this season?
Okay.
So, ugh.
So then holler at us and let us know what you thought of Army of the Dead by Zack Snyder. You can reach us on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and our show notes will be posted with links to the articles that we discussed at reanimatedpodcast.com. And well, for me, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you later.
And until next time, ciao.